I understand that you had very interesting discussions. I caught a couple of lectures in the last 2 hours, and as usual, this is a very lively and very productive conference, which I look forward to coming again and again to this. Which is not something that I ever thought that I would do when I got appointed to the position of at the National Economic Council, because, you know, what an economist is doing at an, you know, green energy conference, I don't know. But apparently energy issues are taking about quarter to a third of my time right now, so I guess there's something to do. But what I want to talk about is sort of a 30,000 feet view on the policy and how it relates in general to the Israeli economy on which we focus. The world, you know, this is a cliche, but, you know, nevertheless it's true, as many of cliches are. There's an increase in population, world population in the developing world. There's a aging of developed world. There's a tremendous urbanization, probably on the scale that has not been witnessed previously, and associated dramatic change in the way of life of many people, hundreds of millions of people. There is an increasing income in developing countries, and no matter whether the population is growing or not growing, the income growth is generating new demands on food, water, and other things that we take for granted in urban areas that we consume. This generates enormous challenges in supplying those new demands in the urban environment, which is inherently distanced from the sources of food production and water sources and in many cases energy sources. We have to add to that changes in the climate and very limited resources. All that implies that we have to be way more efficient in the way we use the resources than we were before. And interestingly, Israel was, unfortunately I can't see my notes. If you, can I do this? Okay. What's interesting is that Israel was okay, good. Israel was dealing with these challenges for a long time. We have very little land, very little water, and until recently no own energy resources, or at least not the ones that we could use. So, you know, we have water, food, and energy problems which becoming very rapidly, very acute in the rest of the world. And we've gained a lot of expertise in dealing with those, not because we were particularly smart in anticipating those, but just because we had to. And okay. And so the same innovation that we used in dealing with our problems now can be leveraged to deal with the same problems but elsewhere. And the question is how we can create an environment in which Israel becomes beta site for the world in these, how we can turn Israel into becoming recognized as a source of solutions for the world and not being presented all the time, mostly incorrectly, as a source of its problems. This is very challenging because, you know, we have all these limitations. You know, it's a small market, so the economics of the projects is not that great. We have relatively high cost in general of developing new technologies. We have in some areas we have very limited expertise where it is very developed in the world. We have limited financial resources, you know, much better than it used to be, but and we have no scale-up potential whatsoever. scale up on Israeli scale is no scale. So there's no scale and no up. So definitely has to take place elsewhere. So all these problems make it challenging. How do we take this challenge or the opportunity to become sort of the source of solutions for the world and to overcome these difficulties? Okay. So one of the things is that we have to be very careful in what we engage in, what we don't engage in. Okay, we can't be jack of all trades. We can't be doing everything because we have no expertise in many things and we won't get it. We don't have scale to generate this expertise. We don't have, for example, in automotive industry, we can be in certain areas of automotive industry, but we don't have as suppliers to automotive industry. But as we don't have automotive industry nearby, we will always be in relative disadvantage to companies in or labs in Germany or France or United States or Japan, which have developed industry right next door, which interacts with them. So we have to be very, very careful. But at the same time, there is a role for the government, and the role for the government is to engage in. It's a very slippery slope. You don't want to engage in guiding the market on which technologies to choose. But we can identify areas that a priori Israel has comparative advantage or may potentially develop comparative advantage, provide some kind of regulatory guidance which will lead to adoption of certain technologies for our local use, and through that generate R&D activity and development activity, which you can see around here. I just visited one example, a company that is building solar here and in other countries that is doing just that. Okay, we are trying to promote that. Better, worse, that's a question, but we are trying to do that. And so the experience in the local market is very important to come and be able to compete in the world market. However, you have to be a little bit careful, because some of these could be taken to an extreme. We can say, well, why don't we introduce incredibly tight regulation in all fields, and then the industry will have no other solution but to figure out how to do things to comply with the regulations, and then we'll somehow figure it out, and then we'll export it. Unfortunately, you have Unfortunately, everything has benefits and costs, and some of the regulations that may lead to that would be devastating for the economy. So we have to always be very careful with the cost is the cost of the regulation to the economy. At the benefit side, you have development of new technologies as an engine for growth. So this is saying, which areas we can be more proactive, where the cost is not as high, in order to develop engines for growth for the economy. By the way, this is unique for a small economy, because large economy cannot do that, because the costs of such regulation would be too high for a large economy. For a small economy, if you can solve a problem that occupies the world, even if you impose some cost by implementing this solution, you can then sell these solutions to the world and still on the total benefit. Let me give you, so this is like a generic view on the entire universe. Now I want to talk a little bit about energy. In terms of energy, we deal with this again from the, maybe not 30,000 feet, but 15,000 feet. The idea is how do we provide the Israeli economy with the energy that is allows it, that is the cheapest that we can do in all respects, that it's cheapest in terms of cost and cheapest in terms of its effects on the environment. Now, if you look at the, in some sense you can, no, go back, no, that's okay. In some sense, what we want to do, we want to push ahead with the growth, but try to minimize the pollution or the externalities that the energy consumption that is necessary for growth imposes on the environment. Now, this, what we want to do is to minimize this. I mean, that is just a product of the total consumption of energy per unit of GDP times the pollution, or I call it pollution, but all the externality per unit of energy. Okay, and let's see what happens with this equation. What happens is that in terms of the consumption of energy, you can't see the names of the countries, but these are all OECD countries, and as you go up, it becomes better. So we're not that bad in that respect. The reason it's not, again, it's not that we're that successful, it's just that the industry that we have relatively few heavily energy consuming industries, okay, where our industry is less energy consuming, and so we are consuming relatively little energy per unit of GDP. On the other side, the energy that we do use is rather polluting. Okay, here we very fairly low on the scale. Again, this is not something that we to blame too much, because we are an energetic island. We have no hydro, we have no nuclear. You know, so the stuff that we do have, there are some nice people that keep blowing up pipelines in the neighborhood. So that's unfortunately. The product is, is not great. I mean, we are in a, but at the same time, if you think about it, we are roughly in the middle range. I mean, the difference between, let's say Turkey or Belgium or New Zealand and Israel is not very high. I mean, it's practically the same. There's this big range of companies that are at the same level. So if we were to move away, we need to somehow move up on this scale without moving down on that one. So how do we do that? So what are the goals? Now, at the same time, there's all these changes that are happening, both in Israel and abroad. First of all, we have found some gas. Luckily, the God Almighty hid it sufficiently well, so we didn't find it in the 60s or the 70s, because otherwise our economy would have looked completely different, and I don't think I would have loved that. But we finally, now when we found it, it is not going to affect our economy too much, because this is still going to be maybe 1 or 2% or 3% of the GDP, so it's not something, but it's still nice to have, and it allows us to do all kinds of things that we didn't think that we could do before. There is also much better awareness of the issues that we're discussing, so that helps. This conference is a manifestation of that. There is all these technological improvements around the world, in in the PV world, in other worlds that are rapidly, and of course there's a lot of R&D and innovative activity in Israel. And so, how can we leverage these changes to achieve the goals of the economy, of the country? And the goals are fairly simple. I mean, we have all kinds of government resolutions, but what is behind all that is that we need the energy sector that is efficient, that is stable, and it's competitive. So the costs are low. We want to reduce. This is a government resolution to reduce the pollution of all kinds, but which is measured essentially by CO2, by pollutions by 20% relative to business as usual, and we want to develop the comparative advantages of the Israeli market in the energy field as an engine of growth of the Israeli economy. Okay, and that is why we are so heavily engaged in this area, because otherwise, you know, there are ministries that whose job it is to deal with these issues on the day-to-day basis, and they do it, and they indeed do it. So several things that currently going on in the government. First of all, the finds of gas are being developed, and the government is currently trying to understand what should its policy be towards the development of this newly found resource, where we want to ensure that it's going to be competitive, so the industry in Israel and the consumers get reasonably inexpensive gas. It has to be secured. The supply, you know, we all understand what it means to live under unsecured supply, and how do we allow ourselves and the companies who are developing it to monetize the gas finds in such a way that it would induce the development and the exploration at a rate that will lead to further finds. Okay, that is one committee that Shaul Temek, who was here yesterday, is leading very successfully. Hopefully within a couple of months we're going to be done with it, and then we can start taking specific measures within the general policy. Second is the government made a resolution to introduce 10% of total energy electricity consumption being from renewables, and part of that is the part that we dealing with, is to try to understand what does it mean to have a grid parity. And grid parity in this sense is an idea to see what is the cost that is saved to the economy, to the entire economy as a whole, including consumers, the environment, everything, by introducing a particular renewable technology into the market. Okay, as of today, there is no number like that, or there is no formula like that that allows us to even know to what extent we're subsidizing as consumers renewable energies. Okay, this is not instead of these 10%. This is in addition. We would like to provide certainty to the industry to say, well, this particular technology, there's a formula that says this is how much it saves, depending on the prices of alternative fossil fuels, depending on the cost of capital, depending on all kinds of things. If you know all this at any given point in time, you know how much this technology saves per kilowatt hour. If that is something that you know, that is an important information, because you can then decide and say, look, definitely no industry can survive on internal subsidies for a very long time. Okay, so at some point the subsidies have to go. So you can provide a guidance of where we should be. You can decide, for example, that you can subsidize it as a starting industry, but at the same time you can say, well, that these subsidies are going to be declining over time, and this is where you should aim. This provides targets for R&D, this provides targets for the companies. It provides, it takes you away from uncertainty relating to the future government decisions on quotas, on prices, etc. It provides stability, which I think is a good thing for the industry. The same thing, there was another commission that was dealing with the government decision to reduce emissions of CO2 by 20%. You all know the commission was multi-ministerial, involved many different areas. Many projects are already underway, and we're going to hear, I believe in a couple of months, a report on how this whole progresses. Again, the same view. It was multi-pronged approach. We went to improve the efficiency in housing, in electrical appliances, in transportation, in all areas. It was quite a long process, but was quite I believe it was quite successful as a commission. In transportation, we already have green taxation of cars and of fuels. We support and encourage electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and then there is a big program that was started launched in this conference last year, which is the reduction of oil dependency in transportation, which Sagi Dagan has been very successfully running over the last year. By the way, I want to congratulate Sagi for getting a formal job in that program a couple of days ago. This is a very interesting program, and it's gaining recognition around the world, and we're very happy that it's advancing so well. This is a great example on how 9 ministries can cooperate together in advancing the strategic goal of the State of Israel very well. This is quite something to applaud. And finally, we would like to think how we can promote generically clean tech as on the level of R&D that I was talking about. We're thinking about ways to use regulation and government support to launch this industry, or actually not launch it. It already exists, but to empower it. These are more on the level of discussions, and we're not yet there. I think that. I sort of lost the train of thought. As I pointed out, the local economy is very efficient in using energy. Again, because of the nature of the economy, but we use energy that is relatively polluting. That means that we have additional incentives to look for better energy sources, and this area is critical to developing the technologies. We, as usual, maybe we're overdoing it a little bit, but we have convinced ourselves, and I think rightly so, that we are good in improvising and innovating things. I don't know where it comes when foreign delegations ask me why is Israel having this. I say this is definitely in the water, because I have no other explanation. But at the same time, when you are persecuted for 2,000 years and you are forced to move from place to place, you better be good in adapting to new conditions, because otherwise you just don't survive. Those of us that didn't adapt, they just, it's Darwinism. So I think that those of us that made it, have some genetic pool that is more survivable, more adaptable. The combination of regulatory environment that is conducive not only to efficient use of energy, and that is conducive to growth, creates this magical combination that everybody's talking about green growth. Except that majority of some people talk about the growth and some people talking about the green. We need to put them together to actually combine the two. In our opinion, it has a potential of becoming one of the engines of growth for Israeli high-tech, which will be a welcome diversification from ICT. At the same time, it could be using the same minds or the same technologies that have been developed in the ICT area, but channeling them to a different market. And I think that the discussions that you're having here and the follow-ups and the actions taken by the industry and support from the government will hopefully allow us to accomplish that goal. Thank you.